som alla finländare talar ju svenska.
Don't finish, but
vi
you
alla
can choose.
älskar att tala svenska. Och jag heter Pekka som alla finländare. Men då det gäller om neurologiska sjukdom och vetenskap så måste jag säga att jag saknar ord även på finska. Alltså jag ska ha den där presentationen på engelska, hoppas det är okej med alla. Men jag har en sida på svenska, alltså en sammanfattning på svenska. Vi är ett läkemedelsutvecklingsbolag som sa, och vårt fokus är i regenerativ medicin och särskilt i Parkinsons sjukdom och sekundär lymfödem. Och vi är listade i First North Finland, men vi har också tänker att bli listad också i First North Sverige. But switching to English, so as said, we are a drug development company. We are focused on regenerative medicine, so our approach to drug development is aiming at real breakthroughs. We don't want to just develop new symptomatic treatments. We really want to make breakthroughs and change the way diseases are treated. And this all based on leading science in the world. That's our background at the University of Helsinki. We also collaborate with excellent sites in Sweden. Our clinical studies actually are being, they all involve sites in Sweden. We have Karolinska here in Stockholm, as well as Uppsala and Lund University hospitals. And we are really happy for this collaboration. You have great clinicians. We are really happy to work with them. So our assets, CDNF for the treatment of Parkinson's disease, aiming at stopping progression of Parkinson's disease, which would be a first time in any neurodegenerative disease. And Lymfactin, a gene therapy, to be the first, hopefully the first drug to treat secondary lymphedema, a huge unmet need, and there our focus is first in breast cancer-associated lymphedema. Both studies are now in clinical proof of concept studies, so they are now in randomized placebo-controlled studies, which are fully funded, which means that from these studies we will already learn not just the safety of these drug compounds, but also if they really are efficacious compared to a placebo. So really exciting stage at the moment, especially after completing our recent round of financing, which enables completing these studies, and also introduced an excellent new shareholder from Sweden. So Roburs Medica was the cornerstone investor in our latest funding round. As said, our assets are based on really strong science. This is what we believe in. I have long collaborated with investors also in Sweden, and one thing I have learned is that in drug development there are always high risks involved, but you want to base your work on the strongest possible science because that will increase the chances of success. And our scientific fathers are professors Mart Saarma and Kari Alitalo, both shown here. Both have published their science behind our drug compounds widely in the most highly appreciated scientific journals, and they both are very well known internationally. They've received numerous science prizes. So jumping on to these assets, what are we actually going to do in Parkinson's disease? Parkinson's disease, as I'm sure many of you know, is a movement disorder. Its symptoms are shaking and problems controlling your movement. It's a neurodegenerative disease which is caused by our certain types of neurons dying in our brains. And there are, of course, treatments for Parkinson's disease. One of the main treatments for Parkinson's disease still in use today was discovered about 60 years ago. So amazingly, over the past 60 years, essentially nothing new has been discovered in terms of Parkinson's drugs. And the available drugs only help treat the symptoms of the disease. So for a while after the diagnosis, the patient will get some improvement to their motor symptoms. But it doesn't change the fact that the neurons continue to die in their brains. And gradually, as the disease progresses, these symptomatic treatments will lose their efficacy. This is also a very expensive disease societally, so it's been estimated that the annual cost of Parkinson's disease to societies is about $50 billion. This means that President Trump could build 2 walls between US and Canada every year with this money. It's a huge amount of money we're talking. It's also been estimated that if someone came up with a drug that stopped the progression of Parkinson's disease, in the US that would save the society over $400,000 per patient. And there are roughly 1 million patients in the US, so this is obviously a significant economic burden at the same time as it is a significant human burden. And this is exactly our aim. We aim at stopping progression of the disease. This is a very busy, very scientific slide, but the aim here is really to give an idea of CDNF, our drug compound, affecting many relevant things in our body associated with Parkinson's disease. CDNF is actually a protein that we all have. We all have it in our brains, we all have it in our blood circulation, we just have very, very small amounts of it. It's actually so important that all mammalians have it, and even many vertebrates have it. So even lizards and fish have CDNF. It's been so important for us that the evolution has conserved it in most animals. And the role of CDNF in our bodies all the time is to help our neurons survive. Because as you know, we don't get any new neurons in our brains after childhood. So we need to keep those neurons alive to keep functioning well. And this is exactly the role of CDNF, even in a healthy patient. It helps keep our neurons alive. This discovery made about a decade ago was, of course, very exciting because it has created the possibility of maybe utilizing this natural mechanism also to diseases. So maybe we can also use the same mechanism to help our neurons stay alive when there is a Parkinson's disease or even some other neurodegenerative disease. This mechanism was published in Nature, the prestigious science magazine, a decade ago, which was also the time at which the drug development was started. And since then we have learned, as this busy and very small font including slide explains if you take a look at it afterwards on paper, that CDNF actually functions through several mechanisms that are relevant to Parkinson's disease. It reduces so-called ER stress, which is the natural stress reaction of our neurons in Parkinson's disease. It reduces neuroinflammation, which is another hallmark in all neurodegenerative diseases. And it also reduces the toxicity of alpha-synuclein, which is a toxic particle found in the brains of Parkinson's disease patients. And as always in drug development, there has to be a lot of preclinical studies before actual clinical development in humans can start. And this slide here is probably from the most important preclinical study done to date with our CDNF. This is a monkey study with Parkinson monkeys. And these poor Parkinson monkeys are very apathic. They just sit in their cage and don't do much anything because their Parkinsonism makes them so immobile. And in this picture, the dark staining indicates functional dopaminergic neurons. So they are those neurons which in Parkinson's disease die and thereby cause the disease. And as you can see in the picture in the left, almost all of those neurons are gone. There is not much dark there. That's why the monkeys were so badly suffering from Parkinsonism. After we had given them 3 monthly doses of our CDNF, there is a significant recovery, as you can see in the picture on the right. So much more dark staining, suggesting that we have not only been able to stop progression of the disease, but we've even been able to restore a lot of the dopaminergic function in this area of the brain. This very nicely correlated with improved motor function, both fine motor function and gross motor function in this study. But even more excitingly, this study was done at the University of Pittsburgh in the United States by a research group that has a lot of experience in this monkey model of Parkinson's disease. And they also noticed that the CDNF-treated animals had a very strong improvement in their motivation. Already during the study, they said that there was a group of animals that started again to react to the animal caretakers, started to look for food in their cage, started to look more like and act more like normal, healthy animals. And at the end of the study, when the results were analyzed, this group was concluded to be the CDNF treatment group. So for the first time in the world, any drug compound was also able to help the non-motor symptoms in these Parkinson animals. Very exciting results, and these kind of results, of course, helped us have those very good clinical sites, including Karolinska, in our first clinical study. So we believe that CDNF has the potential to change the way Parkinson's disease is treated, the way Parkinson's patients need to live with their disease, because eventually we hope that this could even stop progression of the disease, not just help the symptoms for a short time. Based on robust science, as said, related results have been published in many highly appreciated scientific magazines. And as said, we are currently in a clinical proof of concept study. So the study involving Karolinska and Lund University hospitals, in addition to Helsinki, this study actually has a placebo group and is double-blinded. So part of the patients are receiving different doses of CDNF, a part of the patients is receiving a placebo. And then roughly at the end of this year, we will unblind the study and we will be able to compare what we see with placebo versus what we see with CDNF. So currently at a very exciting stage. Also, good to note that this study was funded by a very large grant by the European Union, a Horizon 2020 grant. And the criteria for receiving this grant were the fact that it's based on leading science in the world, and it has a high potential to change clinical practices. So we were really happy to receive not just the funding, but also this independent validation of our science. Now, CDNF protein that we're currently having in the clinical study is a protein that doesn't penetrate the so-called blood-brain barrier, the organ in our brains that protects the brains from any impurities in our blood circulation. So if you just administer CDNF in the brain, it would not in the blood, it would never reach the brain. And that's why in this first clinical study we are actually administering CDNF directly in the brains, directly in the right area where it's needed. We use a very sophisticated medical device for that purpose. It has worked very nicely. However, of course, thinking about application in other neurodegenerative diseases and also thinking about maybe treatment of earlier stage Parkinson patients, obviously it would be much nicer to not have to drill holes in the heads of the patients to give them the medicine. And hence we are really excited about our discovery of the next generation CDNF, or ex-CDNF as we call it. We have shown that if we take the protein, but then we just cut a certain part of the protein, that certain cut, that peptide retains the biological activity of the natural protein, but it also is able to penetrate the blood-brain barrier. And we have already shown in Parkinson's disease models that with this compound we'll get the same activity without having to inject this directly in the brains. This obviously has been received with a lot of enthusiasm by several large pharmaceutical companies, because it also suggests that this could be applicable in other neurodegenerative diseases where maybe a direct infusion might not be possible. So that was CDNF for the treatment of Parkinson's disease, as well as next generation CDNF. Now our other asset is in a totally different field. Lymphedema, secondary lymphedema, is shown in the picture. A picture tells you, of course, more than 1,000 words. This patient here has breast cancer-associated secondary lymphedema. So as a consequence of breast cancer treatments, the lymphatic system of the patient has been damaged so badly that the lymph starts to accumulate in the arm. So as you can see, the one arm of the patient is significantly swollen. And this is not just some temporary bypassing swelling. This is a serious disease, as the swelling is permanent and progressive. And if not treated, it can get really nasty and also make the patient vulnerable to infections and so forth. As of today, there are no efficacious treatments of secondary lymphedema. There are no drugs approved for the treatment of secondary lymphedema. There are even no very serious drugs in development for secondary lymphedema, except for our Lymfactin. You may recognize this lady here, Hollywood superstar Kathy Bates. She was in Titanic, for instance. She has breast cancer-associated secondary lymphedema, and she has given her face to the fight against this disease. Very importantly, also encouraging patients around the world to start demanding treatments rather than being shy about the disease and ashamed of the disease. Largely thanks to her, people are now understanding that lymphedema is a serious disease that needs to have much better treatments. And we are collaborating with the same patient association, Learn, where Kathy Bates is a very active spokesperson. How Lymfactin works. Again, this is a very straightforward regenerative medicine, almost a textbook example of regenerative medicine. It's based on the scientific discovery of VEGF-C, which is, again, a human protein naturally in our body, and whose role in the body is to grow new lymphatic vessels. So exactly what you'd want to do to repair the damages in the lymphatic system. So when Lymfactin is administered in an area where there are damages in the lymphatic system, the green lines here are lymphatic vessels, the VEGF-C protein will result in sprouting of new lymphatic capillaries, which will then mature into a functional lymphatic network. We have already, of course, again, first shown in animal models that this works very nicely compared to controls. Lymfactin very nicely grows new lymphatic vessels connected to the lymph nodes. And then, again, based on very strong science, we have moved on to clinical development with Lymfactin. We have already completed a phase 1 study that was done in real patients, in breast cancer-associated lymphedema patients. We just announced very recently that the 12-month follow-up data on all patients continue to suggest that the treatment has been very safe. We're also very happy to have seen that the patients are doing well after this first study, but of course that was a non-controlled study, so we have moved on to a phase 2 study with an appropriate placebo control and blinding. as said, including 2 clinical sites in Sweden, and we look forward to seeing the results from this study. This is, even though it's a poorly known disease, this very first niche where we start alone, breast cancer-associated lymphedema, is already a 600 million market as estimated, and there's significant potential in expanding into other secondary lymphodemas. So again, to summarize, we have 2 very innovative drugs in development, both in fully funded proof of concept clinical studies, placebo-controlled clinical studies, and very excited about the next 12 to 24 months to seeing the readouts, unblindings of these studies. And of course, one of the reasons why I'm here today is that we have announced that we are considering a dual listing in First North Sweden, for the reason that in Finland we don't have the same legacy, the same strong history in drug development as you do in Sweden, and consequently Finnish investors don't have much expertise in drug development. So we believe that it will be very useful for the company to also be exposed to Swedish, very highly expert investors in this field. And just quickly, our management team, and I guess time's out, so thank you very much for your attention. Pekka.
Thank you so much. Så vi ska prata svenska nu, eller om du ändå ska...
Jag kan försöka, men jag tror att jag behöver svara på engelska.
Du får välja, okej. Men ni ska göra en parallellistning i Stockholm, alltså när kan det bli av?
Vi har annonserat att det ska händas i 2019, men vi ska se hur det går.
Okej. Then you will probably learn better Swedish than if maybe you will spend some more time here. So let's talk about you made some really nice coverage of your research and the development from the different phases and so on. Do you know? I mean, I'm sure you have so much putting so much effort in how to spend your money in the most efficient way. But can you at all think about when will we see a turnaround, and what can we expect? Where will you earn your money, and when?
Always a good question. And
I know it's impossible to give a concrete. Yes. Please elaborate a little bit.
Yes, as you know, in many drug development companies, one possibility of an early source of income is partnering. So if you consider our peers in Sweden, for instance, IRLAB or BioArctic, BioArctic has a good, strong collaboration with AbbVie, which helps them fund their work going forward. And of course, that's also, in certain circumstances, a possibility to actually generate revenue, so you could sell certain rights of your assets. This is, of course, also an interesting possibility for us going forward. As said, this is a very exciting field. If we could, for the first time in the world, show that we can stop progression of a neurodegenerative disease, that would, of course, be a huge thing for any big pharma in the brain disease area in the world. So of course, that is the kind of discussion we are having. But then if we think about how long it takes to actually have these drugs in the market, that would of course be a longer process. So if we were to keep these assets to ourselves until we reach the market, then we are talking about several years.
Depending on to find a partner to commercialize and so on?
We haven't announced as our strategy that most likely we will partner the assets after strong clinical proof of concept, which is, of course, the major value inclination milestone, typically highly appreciated by pharma companies. But for instance, Lymfactin is a very exciting drug in the sense that you could compare it to Wilson Therapeutics, where they had a very nice niche product that even a small company could bring to the market all the way by themselves. And Lymfactin is exactly that kind of a drug, because lymphedema patients are typically treated, for instance, in the US at very specific sites. So you don't need a huge sales force covering the entire country. You just need a sales force to cover those specific hospitals, and then you basically cover the entire country.
Okay. So I don't think it's very much more to say about when your income will come. So let's focus on how you finance your business and your operations for today. Because you don't only go to the stock market for money, you also have some other parts. You have this, you were awarded a grant for like 6 million euros for your project Treater. But I don't understand, is that a loan or is it a gift? Or
that's a gift.
So
the European Union is very generous to those few selected groups that actually get these grants. They are highly competitive, but we had a great consortium. Of course, it helped that we had, Lund University Hospital, we had Karolinska Institutet and Karolinska Universitetssjukhus in the consortium. So the European Union saw that we had a strong group, which definitely helped win this grant. But yes, it's very generous money from the European Union.
Does it help to attract other money from other?
Absolutely. Of course, it's hard to say how much it matters, but also, as you know, in clinical development, when big pharma companies come in and look at your results, they will also look at the clinical sites involved. So if you have Lund University Hospital in Parkinson's disease, known as one of the leading European centers in Parkinson's disease research, and Karolinska, which is of course one of the leading hospitals in Europe, that makes a big difference compared to if we did it, somewhere in Asia at hospitals no one has ever heard of.
But probably it's more important that you had the Robur Medica who stepped in as a new anchor investors in your issue, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because that's quite rare that they go into such early phases and so small companies.
Yes,
how did you attract them? I read that you met them on some conference or something.
Yes, I think their fund manager, Matthias Hägglum, got intrigued by the science and of course knowing, he is a great expert in this field, so of course he knows that aiming at disease modification in Parkinson's disease is a very high risk aim. But at the same time, of course, the reward is very high if you are successful. And I believe that he just found the science behind this very strong and very compelling.
Yeah, and also you said you've seen already some quite big deals within the segment of the... So maybe that. Do you want to comment a bit on that, on the other affairs been done in maybe not in Parkinson, but in Alzheimer and?
Well, I think the examples here in Sweden are very, very interesting. If you look at BioArctic, their market cap is about 15, 20 times our market cap at the moment. So maybe that's also of interest that if a similar deal could be reached, there's also significant potential for increasing our value. Because in drug development, these kind of deals typically are measured in the hundreds of millions of dollars, talking about the total deal value, of course. So the development company wouldn't immediately get that money, but over the development time.
Yeah, so you most definitely are within a very interesting segment. So all the good luck with that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pekka. Thank you.